Committee, which is one of the permanent standing committees of the REA board. It has the purpose of promoting interfaith and ecumenical collegiality and religious education through the granting of 2 awards. One is called the Harper Award, and the other is the Warnham Award. Nominations for this award come from the membership of the association. They are sent to the committee, which this past year included Joyce Mercer, Justice Baird, and Sarah Lee. They considered the nominations and made a recommendation to the board, and we this evening are able to make that presentation and to receive the words of wisdom from the recipient. So tonight I have the privilege of introducing the winner of that award. But first, a lot of encouragement, and we are grateful that you were able to join us this evening. But this evening we have the privilege of introducing the 2013 recipient of the Harper Award, Robert Jackson, whose teaching, research, writing, lectures, workshops, and consultations on religious education policy and practice have had a profound impact internationally on interfaith and ecumenical collegiality and religious education. The fact that Robert Jackson is a jazz musician may actually provide the most adequate lens to which we may recognize and honor his work. He is distinguished by his solo and ensemble work, which all can be seen in his Rethinking Religious Education and Plurality, in which he identifies and weaves together various approaches to the challenge of religious education in diverse publics, before moving into a soaring exposition of his own understanding of the distinctively interpretive task that he envisions for it. In 2012, he was a member of the faculty of the University of Warwick, which I understand is not pronounced Warwick. But as one who does not seem to know the meaning of retirement, he continues to design and contribute to research studies in the Warwick Religions and Education Research Unit. He continues to lecture, consult, and write. He began his career as a secondary school teacher. There he became interested in the religious experience of South Asian students whose families had been expelled from Uganda. His interest expanded to the study of Hinduism, ethnography, philosophy, and social psychology. Through subsequent years, he has directed significant empirical research on the teaching of religion in public settings and has published many articles and several books. He sits on the editorial board of 7 different journals and has been a consultant to national educational policy agencies in several different national and international contexts. You may have seen recently in an email from Lucinda that he was honored as the Routledge's Education Author of the Month. He embodies, in other words, in an exemplary way, both the depth and the breadth of William Rainey Harper's vision for the life and work of the Religious Education Association. We have asked 3 of his colleagues from England, the Netherlands, and Germany to speak in more specific ways about the significance of his work. And so we begin with David Lankshear, Research Fellow for the Center for Education Studies at the University of Warwick. Then Ina ter Avest, Professor in Education and Philosophy of Life at the University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. And then Bert Roebben, Professor of Religious Education at the Institute of Catholic Theology in Technische Universiteit Dortmund. So, David.
I think I'm here because I'm the only other Englishman in the room. To work in our field seems to me that you have to possess something of the warrior in your psyche. For at times, colleagues, it's a battle, isn't it? With the secular fundamentalists who seem to wish to deny children the knowledge and understanding to make up their own minds and come to their own decisions. And on the other extreme, with the members of some faith groups who suspect any attempt to teach their children about anything other than their own particular understanding of their faith. So if we're all engaged in that, it's right that this evening we celebrate one of the great warriors, particularly from the English scene, but his contribution, as has already been said, goes far beyond the English setting. Most of you will know him by his writing, and if you're not aware of his writing, where have you been? You don't get to be author of the month for Routledge Education unless you've written a few books that people have actually bought and read. But I want to focus on three particular aspects of his work, with which you may not be quite as familiar. Our National Department for Education is not known for its active support of religious education. It sort of acknowledges it's there, doesn't always value it very highly, and has only once been known to fund a significant research project into the subject. Bob led the team from Werrow that obtained the contract to do that research project, brought it to a successful conclusion, despite the best attempts of the civil servants to stop it, or to make a mess of it by reinterpreting the words and trying to insist on their own understanding of religious education based on the old scripture lesson they remembered from their schooling. But we did get that contract, it was pushed through, and was a major achievement within the English setting. His founding of the Warwick Religions and Education Research Unit has already been mentioned, and as a member of that unit, I would feel pleased about that, wouldn't I? But it seems to me that it's actually very significant, because in the English scene we have produced over the years a number of people who have made significant contributions to the work of RE. But one of the things which has happened almost universally is as soon as they have retired from their university post, the university has closed down their department or unit and directed the money elsewhere. The fact that the Warwick Religions and Education Research Unit continues and has a potentially interesting and good future, despite Bob's retirement from being director, is a great tribute to the way he has worked to embed it in the university and to get the university to value it. And you need to understand that in the context that the university has shut the Institute of Education in which the unit was established. But it's survived because it's now in a Centre for Education Studies, and we will try and make sure that it continues to be a power for research in this field. So two very domestic English parts of the achievements that Bob has racked up. And there's a third one, and you really have to understand this in terms of the English national psyche. We live on a small island, and we like it like that. And those of us who actually realise that there is a world beyond that small island are comparatively few in number. The fact that Bob has worked tirelessly at the European level, working with other colleagues from various parts of Europe to develop the subject there, is remarkable in the English context, because it just isn't understood. Why would you bother with Europe? I mean, when I stopped working for the Church of England 10 years ago, I said, to whom do I hand over my European connections? And the answer was, you can take them with you. Because that's the attitude. So you really have to understand how extraordinary and unusual Bob is as an Englishman to spend all the time he does and express that commitment, have that vision for working beyond the island. And that leads me really to the point where I can hand over to somebody who will talk more sensibly than I. And I'm going to hand over to Ina, who will talk about some of that work that Bob has been done in a European context.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here with you and speak in honor of Bob Jackson. The name of Bob Jackson for European researchers on religious education and citizenship education, in particular the researchers of the REDCO research group, is absolutely related to the interpretive approach. And in this laudatio I will give my impression of Bob as an outstanding scholar making use of the central concepts of his interpretive approach, the concepts of interpretation, reflexivity, and edification. The concept of interpretation is directed outside. It points to the competency to include the external context of a situation or of an event in the way this is described and meaning is given to it. In the process of interpretation, the researcher, according to Bob, always should be highly aware of the construction of the other. What we call our data are really our own constructions of other people's constructions of what they and their compatriots are up to. Including the context means dealing with parts and wholes, acknowledging the positionality of individuals in the context of their membership groups in relation to the wider context of the religious tradition. The first REDCO publication, which Bob edited together with Simon Miedema, Jean-Paul Guillem and Wolfram Weisse, gives an overview of the different ways religious education is situated in the different European countries in relation to their political context. And this publication is an example of the inclusion of context, and the subsequent discussions in the REDCO group are an example of the difficulties researchers may experience becoming aware of the own construction of other people's constructions. The constructions of researchers in RE, of the constructions of teachers in RE, and their narrations of their classroom practices. Bob's reliable and compassionate guidance of older, experienced, and younger starting researchers into the interpretive aspect of our REDCO research is an example in itself of including the context. For example, including in the guidance of the PhD students of the REDCO project a variety of national academic context, varieties on the theme of academic education. The second central concept in the interpretive approach, the concept of reflexivity, is directed inside and points to the internal context of being aware of oneself, or, as I would name it from a multi-voiced perspective, being aware of one's own selves and personal and social understandings in interpreting the testimony of someone from another way of life. Reflexivity is the competency to become aware of the constructions of one's own presuppositions, to be able to deconstruct them and start the work in progress of building new constructions, or better, the work of telling a new narrative, transforming former versions of one's own narration. In order not to be tone deaf to one's own biographical narrative, it is preconditional, according to Bob, to be sensitive to read between the lines, to practice a constant methodological self-criticism, and last but not least, to be open for unexpected and surprising new information and experiences in the everlasting process of de- and reconstruction. This openness for surprising new information and experiences I noticed not only in the professional and academic life of Bob, for example in his continuing participation in discussions to update his interpretive approach, but even more so in Bob's musicality. The way Bob and the members of his band, his partners in crime, give a musical rendering of, say, Summertime, to me is an example of openness to new information and experiences, and reconstructing the central theme of a melody, allowing each of the others in close cooperation to create an interplay between the central theme and an own melodious accent as a variation of that central theme. Bob practices what Habermas would have called religious musicality or musical religiosity. The third, but certainly not the least concept of the interpretive approach is edification. And in edification, the process is directed inside again, but now in the sense of how the study of others may prompt some form of reassessment of one's own understanding of the own way of life, or some insight into the human condition in general. With edification, Bob comes back to the person who made a journey into the lives and experiences of others and returns back home. Going through the confusion caused by the encounter with strange people, odd habits, and bizarre pedagogical strategies, the person returns home with a self-understanding that might be deepened by the studying of other worldviews. Edification activities in classes, according to Bob, should be headed thinking it through and encourage students to use material from a religious or secular worldview tradition as a stimulus to reflect upon matters of personal significance and concern. Edification is a process of change, of development, of encounter with new, other, strange people and experiences, leaving behind presuppositions and create something new, something unknown yet, a process full of uncertainty, a process that might raise feelings of anxiety and be frightening, a process that needs challenging and caring teachers. And Bob is such a teacher, and I'm very grateful that I'm one of his students. As I pointed out earlier, one of the aspects that according to Bob is of pivotal importance in his interpretive approach is to try to be aware of at least some of one's own presuppositions. In this laudatio I was fully aware of my presupposition of Bob being an excellent scholar and teacher, and a dear colleague and friend. And although Bob in his interpretive approach aims at deconstructing presuppositions, I'm sure I'm hold on to this presupposition of Bob preaching and practicing interpretive approach.
We've got 10 minutes left on this.